Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, Ross Clark from Chartsandmarkets.com runs down the major markets. Once again, we've seen record highs for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, setting up the possibility for a major correction soon. Ross checks out gold, crude, and the U.S. and Canadian dollars. Founder of Armstrong Economics, Martin Armstrong, weighs in on the Russia versus Ukraine war cycles, the possibility of bank buy-ins, where gold and the stock markets are going, and whether President Trump is right about wanting lower interest rates. Longtime BC broker Victor Adair gives us his take on the stock markets, gold, copper, tariffs, and the fact August is the biggest month for corporate share buybacks. One of Canada's most successful real estate agents, Allan Mark Angell, gives us the lowdown on Vancouver's priciest homes. He says sales are the worst he has ever seen. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com. Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Clark from Chartsandmarkets.com, where you'll find insightful market commentary and timely technical analysis. You can find him on X at Charts by Ross. Welcome back to This Week in Money.
Pleasure to be with you, Jim.
More record highs on the stock markets this week?
More record highs day by day. This is starting to look like a bit of an exponential run. You know, we had a few of these coming off the April lows where you would run for, a week or so with consecutive days on the upside. And I guess at the end of June, it was the better part of, probably about 10 consecutive days. This one is now 5, and, there's no overlap with the previous days. We're just sort of, you open unchanged and then just keep going. The corrections, we've been watching since we went through the 61% retracement rally back in the early part of May. The pullbacks have only in the S&P have been back to the 20-day moving average, which we've been looking at as a key support level. So that's now been tested 3 times, including just one that we had here on the 27th or on the 17th. And so that's a key level for us at this point, around 6,200 on the S&P. And as far as other markets like the NASDAQ, there you're looking at the same idea, consecutive moves once again on the upside. So, at some point here would suggest that we're going to have a correction, but for now, let's just watch the moving averages. Now, when we look over on the credit side of things, where we look for the high yield bonds, as in JNK, or the CCCs, the high yield index at the Fed, or the bank trading guide that we have. Each one of those continues to step higher and is not showing anything in the way of negative values there. So each of those is at new highs progressively from that April 7th low. So even if we do have a correction at this point, unless we see something on the credit side that is looking heavier than it is right now, we'll just look for a minor move and see how it reacts at that point.
What's going on with gold?
We've been in this triangle now for the better part of 65 trading days. Historically, 60 to 65 is about as long as these consolidations run after you've had a move to the extent that we did into April. And so since we got that exhaustion high just above our major target, price has done absolutely nothing. it attempted a breakout the early part of this week, but couldn't do that. So we're, if anything, back towards the bottom end of the support on the triangle, and it is looking that it could be tired. And if we look at the other precious metals, we've got good topping indications on the intermediate term as far as silver, platinum, and palladium are concerned. So the odds of a correction are coming along quite significantly right now. And part and parcel with that, the U.S. dollar index is going through this basing phase here. The first rally that we had into the middle of July was up against the 50-day moving average at around 99 and change on the dollar index. It produced a sequential 9, so it was overdone and due for a pullback, which we've seen. And as of Friday, things are starting to reverse to the upside. We still look at the 50 or the 20-week moving average up around par as a good upside target following that significant bottoming signal that we got at the end of June and the first few days of July. And, with that, we've had small corrections as far as the pound, the euro, the yen, and the Canadian dollar are concerned. And they, at this point, look as though they had corrective rallies. And it looks as though they're vulnerable at this point to the downside again, which would then fit in with what we see in terms of upside potential for the dollar index.
Anything happening with crude?
As I say, this one just has not produced anything in the way of significant signals since the bombing of Iran. You had the up into that, and then the immediate correction to 65. And here we sit at 65.40 going into the latter part of Friday. We've got some short-term oversold signals, so, it could be good for maybe a bounce, back to 67 or 70, but there's nothing on the longer-term charts that is producing anything that would provide a major signal for us. So, not a trading vehicle from what I can see. And when we look at the stocks there, the XEG or the XLE as the stock concerned are. They're underperforming what's going on in the equity market as a whole, but they do have an upside bias, and the lows of the last week should be looked at as pretty important supports.
Ross, thank you so much for the update.
Good to be with you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com. Find him on X at Charts by Ross. Coming up, Martin Armstrong, next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back. My guest is Martin Armstrong, founder of Armstrong Economics, available online at Armstrongeconomics.com. He's speaking to us from Florida. Marty, welcome back to This Week in Money.
Well, thank you for inviting me. How are things there in Vancouver?
Oh, nice. Reasonable weather. It's not raining, so that's nice.
True, I guess, right?
There's significant concerns of nuclear war ahead. Do you think the war cycles were unable to predict an anti-war president in the White House? And do you think President Trump's actions could change war cycles?
Well, the computer is basically, it's never really been wrong. I think the difference between Camilla and Trump is that maybe Camilla was really just a puppet of the neocons, and I think we probably would be deep in the trenches of World War III already. But I don't think Trump realizes where he's going, in my opinion. He may think he's negotiating, and like this 50-day thing on Putin, but this is not a trade deal. You can't say, I'm going to put a 100% tariff. All right, we'll do 50. All right, we'll split it. This is different. This is geopolitical. And saying you either sign this or else. Honestly, if I'm Putin, there's no way I'm signing anything. He was suckered out the first time, with the Minsk agreement. It was supposed to be a peace deal. The Donbass was supposed to be able to vote on their, to separate, like Czechoslovakia separated into Czech Republic and Slovakia, and, Yugoslavia broke up. I mean, that's, what should have happened in Ukraine. But the neocons just want war, and they wouldn't allow that to happen. There was another peace deal, and Boris Johnson hopped on the plane to Kiev and told not to sign it. Nonsense. Oh, Putin is this. We're the ones that are not agreeing to anything. You had Merkel with the Minsk agreement actually publicly say, which shocked the hell out of me, that, we never intended to honor it. Why would anybody in their right mind sign another peace deal with you when you publicly told the world you had no intention of honoring it? I don't know what these people are smoking, and the press is just, the press is just terrible. I mean, all they do is put out the neocon propaganda. You look at a lot of these articles that come out, their source is ISW, Institute for the Study of War, which is a neocon outfit run by Victoria Nuland's sister-in-law. Russia's always losing. And it's gotten to the point, the real story is that Ukraine is on the verge of falling. And this is why I've been hearing for weeks, NATO's preparing 250,000 troops to go in. And the precedent they're using is that NATO went into Bosnia in 1995. They weren't NATO. And they also went in and started the Kosovo War, bombing the Serbs and everything. They weren't part of NATO. So they're now claiming that they can basically do whatever the hell they want. So, I mean, I had one of the attendees that went to the Vienna Peace Conference a couple months ago, and when he left, he called me. He says, this has got nothing to do with peace anymore. He says, everybody's talking about instituting drafts, preparing for war, and after that, you had NATO demanding everybody has to chip in 5% now. All they want is war. I mean, I saw the internal memos before all this stuff, and you have to understand the way government agencies work. Once you create one to do anything, and they will fight tooth and nail to remain in place, because it's their salaries, their pension funds, all this stuff. All right, NATO should have been shut down when communism failed. Warsaw Pact collapsed. That was the whole purpose of NATO. Russia had, the Warsaw Pact. We had NATO. All that went. So why did we NATO should have been shut down. The internal memos I saw basically said, how do we remain relevant? And the only way they remain relevant is constantly saying Russia wants to invade Europe, which is a bunch of propaganda, because that's, the same thing as Khrushchev back then in the 50s. That was different. That was communism versus capitalism. We will bury you. All right? There isn't anybody in Russia really, in the next generation, or in China for that matter, that ever want to return back to China, back to communism. That's why Putin was so popular, because the communists had filed an impeachment motion against Yeltsin to try and remove him to take it back to the USSR. And Yeltsin turned to Putin because he wasn't a communist and he wasn't an oligarch. And his last words were, protect Russia. And I mean, let's just be objective here. I mean, Putin has been highly restrained. Every red line he has put down. Do not give long-term missiles to Ukraine. We do. I even spoke to Ukrainian military. They were told to go to the border with Russia. They had no idea. And when his MI6 out of London told them to invade the Kursk region. Every single thing they have done has been to try and provoke Putin into attacking anything in NATO so they can say, see, he started World War III. And this is why Zelensky tried to assassinate Putin. What was it, last month? Largely, they want to remove him because he knows the game. He knows that they're trying to create World War III, and they're trying to bait him into it. And so Zelensky tried to get rid of him, as if that would stop the Ukrainian war. No, they know what will happen. You'll get, Medvedev in there, who's already talking about World War III all the time. They want somebody who will respond emotionally. We're going to send in, these people across the border. That's it. I've had enough, and pushes the button. Let's go. This is what they want. Mainly, Europe is falling apart. Economically, it cannot survive. They put in the stupid COVID stuff, locking everybody down. Then they did the climate change dramatically. And then on top of that, they put the sanctions on Russia to cut off the energy. And Germany, which is 25% of the EU economy, you could look it up. The corporate bankruptcies are at record highs. Companies were used to, cheap gas, things of this nature. It's all gone. And so many small businesses lost, between COVID and climate change and all this stuff, that, the German economy is actually shrinking. So the number of possible jobs is actually declining. So we're beyond recessions. The only other economy that's actually shrinking in size is Japan now. Even India now has surpassed the Japanese economy. So it's crazy. This is why, China's been dumping debt from the U.S. dramatically, mainly because you had the neocons that had taken over the Biden administration. Blinken, they took Russia out of the SWIFT system, and then he has the audacity to threaten China. Well, if you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. They said, oh, really? Thank you very much. And that creates bricks. So they're all leaving anyhow because they don't want to be dictated to. Biden turned the U.S. dollar into a military weapon. And so they've divided the world economy, and that's it. Trump, at this stage in the game, with his 50-day ultimatum, honestly, I don't know what the hell he thinks he's doing. There's no way Putin can sign that deal. If he did, he'd be overthrown. I mean, Russians are basically, I spoke to one that I knew from years ago in Japan, and the question was, why does everybody hate us? How do you answer that? I don't know. You had Lindsey Graham on tape with Zelensky saying, this is the best money we ever spent to kill Russians. I mean, if he said that about blacks or Muslims or migrants, that would be a hate crime. It's okay if you say it about Russians. I mean, I don't get it, but this is what they want. You have Boris Johnson made the front pages of the Norwegian press, publicly coming out saying Britain is in a proxy war with Russia. So why would you sign any kind of a peace deal? What does Trump expect to get out of this? Nothing. You got Medvedev over there again saying that Russia should start World War III before the 50 days is up. I mean, I don't see... Trump maybe didn't know what he was doing. He thought he was negotiating, but I think he stepped into a real pile of shit at this point in time. And I don't know, because I did speak to somebody who was close to him a couple months ago, and I just said it point blank. I said, we got to get out of NATO. They're going to create a false flag and try and drag us in under Article 5. All right, I thought that was very controversial. And they actually said to me, yes, you're right, we know. I said, wow, at least that's a step in the right direction. So it's, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's, I've screamed, yelled, and everybody that I know, what the hell are you doing here? I mean, this whole Ukrainian war stuff, we started to begin with. You had John McCain right there in Maidan in 2014, overthrow your government, we're with you, this is all about you, total bullshit. Victoria Nuland handing out, sandwiches over there. The leak on her, communications, F the EU, was all about she installed an interim government, unelected, and they're the ones that were told attack the Donbass. We started the civil war to deliberately bring in Putin, and he took the bait. And that's why I think he sits on his hands now, because he understands that even with the Minsk agreement, standing on stage, signing it, they have made a fool of him. He trusted the West, and wrongly. They've just lied at every single step of the way. And I feel that the American government under Biden was usurped by the neocons. And I have serious questions as to how you have Victoria Nuland, you have Blinken, who was Secretary of State, then you had Garland, who weaponized the DOJ and going after Trump with all these lawsuits. All three claim to be from the Ukraine region, All three claim that their families were personally persecuted by the Russians. And they're the ones making these decisions to take us into this stuff. This is a personal family vendetta. And they have weaseled their way all the way up, and I believe it's treason, and I think they should be thrown in prison, actually, for life without parole. But the press won't talk about it. They're paid to do whatever they're told from upstairs. That's it. And that's the problem. I knew the chief executive of the New York Post, and he wouldn't do what they said, so they put him in prison for 18 months on fake charges, as they always do. And he told me, he says, the government calls, and he said, they demand, okay, fine, a favor. Spin the story this way or that way, or kill it. If you do not, then they come after the journalist personally. Tax evasion, whatever. Like the journalist that Snowden was in L.A. was going to hand everything to, suddenly dead. Drove himself into a tree. This is the way it goes. I mean, we found out with COVID. Fine, U.S. Constitution, First Amendment says the government shall not. Doesn't mean YouTube and Facebook, anybody else, they just pick up the phone, cancel that guy, do this, do that. And they all obey. Because if they don't obey, then they get charged with all kinds of shit. So, the press has just been completely compromised. And all you ever read all the time, oh, Russia's weak, Russia's going to fall, Russia's going to do this, all to justify we can go in. That's what they want. They did the same thing with Iraq. Kinzinger, who was the renegade Republican who lost, put on the January 6th panel against Trump. And what did he do? He was out there saying, Russia's weak, we can defeat it in 3 days. They make it sound like we can destroy Russia, they'll never even get a shot off. I mean, they say whatever they want so they achieve their goals. The neocons have got complete control of Europe now, from Stammer to, Macron, Merz. The AfD is opposing Merz over there. He's going to give long-range missiles and everything so they can attack Moscow. Just ask yourself the other way around. If Germany was in war with Ukraine and Russia said, we're going to give you the big stuff so you can wipe out Berlin, what would you do? They took out the Lusitania for that very same stuff. It's openly saying that this is it. The neocons have completely usurped Europe. World War II, you had Sweden was neutral. So was Switzerland. Neither one is today. The Swiss confiscate all Russian assets. Any friend of Putin. Sweden joined NATO. Sent a bunch of jets to Poland. So every leader in Europe is basically committing treason against their own people. The first obligation of a head of state is to protect his own country. And every one of them is in there doing whatever they are told by NATO. And NATO has no purpose whatsoever unless there's war. Without war, who needs NATO? So they have to say, Russia wants to invade Europe. There's nothing there. All right? Japan went into Manchuria in World War II to get energy because we cut it off. There's got to be a reason. Okay? It's not just a stroll in the park. Russia, has everything there. They don't need to invade Europe. Europe has nothing. They don't have gold reserves. They don't have energy. All you're going to get out of it is a bunch of headaches. You walk into these countries, you're going to get civil unrest. That's it. And then, the French will turn around and say, hey, you're going to pay our pensions now? Where's all that going? Who needs it? There's nothing in Europe worth conquering. But the other way around, yes. Russia is the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. And that's really what's behind this. They have an estimated $75 trillion, twice the size of the U.S. national debt. And people I've spoken to in France, they call Macron the petite Napoleon. And these people really think they can wage war against Russia, defeat it, have all these assets, and then Europe is going to rise to the pinnacle of the earth, and North America will be subservient once again. They'll be like the new Roman Empire. This is the bullshit that they're actually telling each other and patting each other on the back about. I don't know. Then you have Kalis, who was the former head of Prime Minister of Estonia, and which is maybe as big as Vancouver, and she's the head of their security now for the EU, and she actually comes out publicly and saying on stage, Russia's too big and it needs to be broken up. I mean, would you sign a peace deal with all these people talking nothing but hate? I mean, what if Putin said, well, United States is too big, should be broken up. Well, Canada is too big, it should be broken up. What right would he have to say such a thing? Yet in Europe, this is no problem. You can even Google it. She's, on stage saying Russia's too big, should be broken up. So I don't know. I mean, these, I've never seen. I've been dealing with governments and geopolitical stuff for more than 40 years. I have never in my entire career ever been so disgusted, seen such incompetent heads of state, and it's not just one, it's everywhere. You got Carney up there, and he wants to join the EU. And you're a member of NATO, and when NATO has already talked to him, I don't know if it's made the press up there, but he, I think what has made the press is to increase the military spending to 5%, but what's coming is NATO's going to insist drafts. So are you going to draft Canadians and send them over to invade Russia? This is what they want.
What month in 2026 is the international war cycle flashing a panic signal?
Basically, the whole year, but it starts really with from this August on, and it's been showing that for quite some time, and it's, I think, just to have to come out and do this, I would think, which lined up perfectly. But we have panic cycles, not just in war for 2026. Those that are on our system, you can look at the Dower Index. a yearly panic cycle for 2026, the British pound, everything is reflecting nothing but war. And the computer's been, good. It's not biased. It's not an opinion. I mean, the euro, we have a panic cycle for 2026. I mean, everything I look at, it's just not a single, model or objective. Russia, it has its panic cycle 2027. But, most of this stuff is just completely nuts. I mean, when we do look at gold, there the panic cycle is not off until 2032, but the volatility should have been starting, this year, and it just builds up. Gold tends to be more neutral, so I would think that you're looking at really, I would say, the tension should increase. You should start seeing it pretty quickly at this stage in the game. When I look at the computer on the war cycle, it's showing basically September this year is quite critical. And it has shown that since the beginning of the year. So, I mean, Trump's 50-day just happens to come into it. The monthly panic cycle on the war starts in January. So this is a consequence of pretty much Europe is in serious trouble economically, and war never comes when everybody's fat and happy. War comes basically when you have an economic problem. And as you know, when they're forming the euro, they came to me. I sat down with them back in '98. Said, this is how we create a currency and consolidate the debt. And then Helmut Kohl from Germany, he didn't allow the German people to vote to join because he knew he would have lost. So much for democracy. He said, before he died, he said he knew he would lose 7-3. So he took Germany into the euro without any election. And so he didn't get, a raft of basically shit, I guess, or impeachment or whatever. He insisted that there would be no consolidation of the debt. And anybody who's a trader knows that, you trade now, you sell one government's bonds against Germany or whatever back and forth. You just move the volatility that used to exist in the currencies to the bond markets. As a fund manager, I can't I can pick up the phone and say, buy me, $10 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. No problem. Deep market over there, I can't. I still have to make the same decision as if the euro didn't exist. Do I want Germany? Do I want France? Do I want Italy? Austria? You still can make all the same decisions. So nothing was accomplished. And what I was told in '98 was, I warned them this was going to fail. And they said they understood. They said they had just get the euro through. That created the whole bureaucracy, their government, etc. And I was told, we'll worry about the debt later. Here we are 26 years later. They still haven't addressed it. And the problem today is that, there's no federal debt. So one country goes down or has a problem like Greece did in 2010, it turns into a contagion that hits everybody. This is like the U.S., if California went bust, they're going to look at what other states are in trouble. They're not going to turn to the feds. So that's the whole problem with Europe, and they know it. All right. So then you had 70% on average by law. Pension funds must have government debt. All right. They took interest rates to negative in 2014 and kept them there for most of the decade. And I warned the ECB. I said, you're strip mining, pension funds and the banks, who you declare must be by law have government debt. And now you're paying negative interest rates. So you're strip mining their assets. And they don't care. They really don't care. All they got to do is they just worry about themselves. How much am I making? Do I win the election next? And that's it. The way they designed the euro was a failure. The way they designed the political system, the audacity to stand up and say, oh, Putin's a dictator. Really? He at least stood for an election. Google it. Ursula, head of Europe, has never stood for an election ever. All right? She's a bureaucrat. That's it. They deliberately created the structure so that the people of Europe have no right to vote. They don't vote on who's the head of the state. They don't have the right to vote for anybody that's in the commission that makes the very laws against them. All right? It's, you experienced it to some degree where, the party picked Carney. All right. But, in Europe, there wasn't even an election. She's just appointed. That's it. Nobody votes. She's never, ever, even once stood for an election. Yet they have the audacity to call themselves a democracy when they deliberately eliminated the right of Europeans to vote on anything. It's the old Soviet Union is what they've done. But as long as they keep bullshitting everybody, they call Putin the dictator. Okay, show me the election that you've actually even had. So, all of this is coming to a head. This is why the AfD was rising in Germany, and they tried outlawing it. It's now the number one party. You had Nigel Farage, his Reform Party, now number one in Britain. All right? Same thing's going on in Portugal, Poland. You're getting these, what they call, far right. Far right, all right, if they're far right, it's because they're far away from you, which is very far left, which is basically, it's almost a communist-type atmosphere. So that's why you have these alternative parties rising, because Europeans have been completely cheated out of everything. And they have no ability to vote to change the direction of Europe.
Do you think nuclear weapons actually exist, or are just higher tech, more powerful bombs now? No, they're very sophisticated. I don't think you're looking at nuclear weapons that are like Hiroshima type thing. The biggest danger, I would say, is, and our press keeps the neocon propaganda. Oh, Putin's threatening war. He's not threatening war. He's trying to tell you, is this what you really want?
And instead, he's threatening us, so we have to go attack him first. This is their propaganda. But Russia has developed nuclear, torpedoes, and they have come out and they have plainly stated, look, one off the east coast of the U.S. wipes out New York, Washington, Philadelphia, the rest of them. Creates a huge tsunami. He's also warned Britain. We just lob one into the, fire it from a sub in the channel. Britain is gone. All right? Huge tsunami wave. So the people drowned instead of, dying of radioactive things from like Hiroshima type thing. One in the Pacific, take out, L.A., San Francisco. So they're definitely, it's not propaganda. They definitely have this stuff. I would expect it to be more of a, like that, or a tactical nuke. I don't think he's going to use a nuclear weapon that would be, take out the whole city type thing. But I definitely, look, if you're in your house, you have a gun, somebody's breaking in, are you going to use it? I think he will. But I think there'll be more of a tactical nuclear weapon.
President Trump has given Russia's President Putin 50 days to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine. Could this be an out-of-the-deal move, with Trump's real focus being on trade deals and peace?
No, I don't think. I think he's trying to negotiate it that way, but this is different. You can't say you sign this or else. And not going to happen. A trade deal is where, all right, I'm going to put 100%. No, make it, 20. All right, you negotiate. But there's no room for negotiation here. And Trump I think, has been grossly misled. And I think the way they did it was using Netanyahu. And why I say that is, I grew up in South Jersey in the Philadelphia area, and I can tell you that Netanyahu went to school there in Philadelphia. I also knew Bill Kristol. His father even taught at Penn. Okay? Bibi was there. Netanyahu was there. He grew up in Philadelphia and went to family gatherings with the Kristols. Bill Kristol's father, Irving, is the one that started the whole neocon movement. So I think basically Trump got rid of the, Victoria Nuland's, John Bolton, etc. But I don't think he realized that Bibi is a diehard neocon, and he just looked at, he's the head of Israel, head of state. He at least told them to back off and not to kill the Ayatollah. That would have been really a stupid move. But, that's, the Ayatollah is the head of the Shiites, and about 30% on average of a lot of these other Middle Eastern countries, Egypt, etc., are Shiite. So you take him out, it becomes a religious war. It's not a war with Iran. This becomes a religious war at that stage, and this would be more like the Protestants assassinating the Pope over the Protestant Reformation or something. You have Zelensky doing this in Ukraine. He's outlawed Orthodox Christianity. You have squads that have been beating priests and stuff like that. He's really a ruthless SOB. and simply because the patriarch of the Orthodox Christians happens to be in Moscow. So he is doing what Bibi wanted to do. I mean, even the Pope has come out against Zelensky. But he's outlawed their language, their religion, everything. And you expect this to be peace? He knows deliberately what he's doing. He doesn't want peace for Ukraine. And he doesn't care. Just with this last, trying to reverse and take out the corruption agencies so he can continue to fill his pockets and his buddies with as much money as possible. It all backfired on him. I mean, the U.S. said, what are you doing? This isn't a good move. I hope the hell he doesn't come to Florida, because I can tell you one thing, there's no way this guy is going to be able to stay in Ukraine. The Ukrainians I speak to, put it bluntly, they said if he was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. He just kidnaps people, sends them off to the front line. He's rejected peace every time. Made the front pages of the Ukrainian press when Boris Johnson went over there and blocked any peace deals. More than 500,000 Ukrainians have died since. And what I hear from them over there is always the same thing. It's, are we allowed to even have peace without permission from London, Paris, Berlin, and Washington? They're not in charge of their own country. I feel sorry for them. I mean, they're just rats in a maze. That's it. And nobody cares.
The neocons want to go to war with Russia. The deep state seems to be rooted everywhere. Could President Trump and President Putin be working together to take down the deep state?
It would be nice, but I don't think, Trump is at that level. He even endorsed Lindsey Graham, which really was a shock to me. I wouldn't, I don't think... I know Trump was anti-war, but he may not be deliberately trying to take us into World War III, but that's where we're headed.
Could World War III actually be the people of the world versus the deep state?
Well, yes. I mean, eventually that's what happens. I mean, because by 2032, we're looking at the computers also projecting all these Republican forms of government are gone, done. They tell us we live in a democracy, which is total bullshit. Nobody ever asks us, shall we go to war with Russia or China or anybody? They just do it. And then we're handed a gun, and if you don't go, you're thrown in prison. That's democracy. Vietnam, that was a lot of the protests about. You were 18, you're old enough to go kill somebody, but you weren't old enough to have a drink. That had to be 21, and you had to vote only at 21. So you were technically, basically, the way they looked at it, incapable of voting or drinking, but you can go shoot somebody. That's okay. And if you die, so be it. Who cares? And they lied about that. I mean, most of my friends that went to Vietnam, I would say 85% died. And we started questioning, are these numbers even correct? Oh, we're winning. Death toll's not that. They were lying about everything. And we said, what, everybody from my hometown that went died? Only our town? I mean, look, it was Churchill who said, truth is so precious in time of war, it needs a bodyguard of lies to protect it. And that's true. I mean, just look at any of these wars. Weapons of mass destruction never existed. the Lusitania. Oh, they took down a passenger ship. Look at Archaeology magazine. I think it was in 1987 when they found it. The U.S. denied the whole time. Oh, that they were using passengers and filling the boats with arms for Britain. And Germans sunk it. They put an ad in the New York, press. Do not sail on this. We know what they're doing, and we will sink it. Oh, and then they said, that justified getting into World War I. All right, when they found it, Archaeological magazine, they were said, oh, gee, be careful. The hull is full of ammunition. They found it. They have never told the truth about anything. Pearl Harbor, there was a big Senate investigation because they found out that U.S. had already broken the Japanese code. FDR pulled out all the major carriers and stuff like that, left people there to be killed. I published on our site, I think it was the Honolulu Tribune, came out 3 days before the attack and said we're going to be attacked that weekend. They knew. There were leaks. And he stands up, pretending this is a surprise. The tapes are out there on Vietnam. We were never attacked. Johnson even said there, he says, for all I know, they were shooting at whales that night. There isn't a single war that has taken place that they have not lied about. So, do they, have they earned any position of trust that we should believe one word that comes out of their mouth? And the press, they hold them up as if they're standing on an altar and they're like some sort of angel sent here to protect us from God.
If you were President Putin, what would you do?
What I would be a bit more aggressive. I would say either Zelensky steps down and let the Ukrainian people vote for themselves. Otherwise, I'm giving you 2 weeks to get out of the city, and I will nuke Kiev off the face of the earth. And then NATO will say, oh, you do that, we're going to attack Russia. And I would say, okay, fine. Every capital of Europe is now targeted. And if Trump stuck his nose in, I would say okay, fine, I'm targeting Washington, New York, Chicago, and L.A. Now what do you want to do? All to support Zelensky, who is a dictator who refuses to stand for election, and every Ukrainian I speak to hates his guts. So I don't know. It's that's what I would do. I would say either he steps down, gets thrown out, let the Ukrainian people vote. What do they want?
If you were President Trump, what would you do?
I'd scrap everybody that is pro-war. Everybody. I'd get rid of every single one that has been telling me that stuff at this stage in the game. And look, peace is possible, but only if you get rid of these European leaders. Every one of them. Just listen to them. Mertz, we're going to send these long-range missiles so they can attack Moscow. Okay? I mean, so you're saying you want him. You want Putin to attack Berlin so you can pretend he is the aggressor. I mean, this is like weapons of mass destruction all over again. And Colin Powell testifying, before the UN, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. They never even had him.
Is Ukraine likely to become part of Russia?
If you look at the whole region, Okay. It's a mess. All right. That region was conquered by the Ottoman Empire. So you have three religions there. You have Islam, you have Orthodox Christianity, and you have Western Christianity. Then you have all these ethnic differences. This is the same problem in the Middle East. We drew these borders up. Okay? Nobody cares about the people. All right? So you have all this war in Ukraine. Why? Oh, for Crimea. Google it. You'll see 10 to 15% of the population are Tatars. They're not Ukrainians. That's from the Mongol invasion of 1240. The Donbass, Crimea, the bulk of the people, the majority are Russian. They've been there for hundreds of years. Khrushchev, all right, he was born there on the border. His successor, Brezhnev, was born right in the Donbass. Okay, so, I mean, what is this? It's a land grab. They don't care about the people that live there. I mean, this is the problem with the whole Balkans. And you can look it up. I mean, the former Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, in 1888, he predicted that Europe would be engulfed in a major war. And he said it's going to come from the Balkans. Serb then assassinated an Austrian Archduke. Starts World War III and World War I. This whole thing, that whole area, it's ethnic. It should be divided by ethnics because they all hate each other. We gave a handful of jets to Greece. Look it up. Made the front pages. What did they say? Oh, great! Now we can attack Turkey with a surprise attack. Turkey's another NATO country. The two of them hate each other. This goes back to Alexander the Great. You're not going to resolve these things. It's like the Middle East. I mean, it's, Sunni versus Shiite versus the Jews. You're talking about religious differences. It's not negotiable. It's just not. And it's my God against your God. And Zelensky's doing the same shit. You got Estonia trying to, that's a good idea, trying to outlaw Russian language even being spoken. I mean, come on. I mean, the hatred there is nonstop. I mean, we had, two employees there in Ukraine, one in Kiev and one in Donetsk. The two wouldn't even talk to each other. If you brought a bottle of Russian vodka to dinner in Kiev, you're lucky if they didn't take it and smash it over your head. I tried talking reason. I said, Russians, they're the ones that were evil. They're the ones that starved us and millions died. I said, well, it's not exactly true. I said, yes, it was Stalin. I said, who was in charge? Kaganovich, a Jew from Kiev. He was Ukrainian. And most real scholars believe that he said, let's take the food from Ukraine as retribution for them killing all the Jews with Hitler and stuff. Victoria Nuland, all of them, they claim that Russian, they just hate Russians. And I tried talking reason with them. I said, look, just look it up. Who was in charge of it? Kaganovich. He was born in Kiev.
Was NATO built for war with Russia, and can NATO survive without the support of the U.S.?
That's why they're trying to, boost everybody's spending to 5% of GDP. They don't care. I mean, Russia is their lifelong adversary. And in all honesty, I know some of these neocons. I've been to dinner with them. It's illogical for what they want to do. Why they hate Russia, they cannot articulate it. The only thing I can explain, I would say, is that they grew up hating Russia when they were communists. And, maybe because of Khrushchev, we will bury you, and, we're going to take democracy and spread it to the world. Well, that all collapsed on their own. So all I could say is I think they're just, pissed off that they didn't get to shoot anybody. They had their whole life built on war with Russia, and it collapsed. Communism is, it's unsustainable. And so, I mean, Russia's a vast country. They think a third time's going to be a charm. You had Napoleon, you had Hitler, and they think the third time they can accomplish it. But Russia has never invaded to conquer Europe. It's always been the other way around. Sweden, Peter the Great, same thing. Tried to go into Russia. They called him Peter the Great because he saved Russia from the Swedes. So this attack is perpetual. And most people don't realize, but in 1917, when the Russian Revolution was taking place, Russia had the world's largest gold reserves. Somebody in the government hid them, and they have never been found. It's like the treasure of the Knights Templar, but they don't know where it is. Some have suspected maybe they buried it in a forest someplace or dropped it to the bottom of one of the deep lakes, but nobody's been able to find it. But this is why Russia is the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. It's vast, but and this is why everybody keeps trying to conquer it. And from the Russian perspective, they said, why didn't God at least put some mountains there between us and Ukraine instead of a flatland where they can just drive the tanks straight through?
Could the European Union, run by an unelected body, be on the verge of destroying itself?
Yes, it's not sustainable. This is pretty much whenever they know they're any government historically, when they know they're on the verge of losing, they get more authoritarian. And this is why they're outlawing free speech and everything. Any democratic government, they're not anywhere close to it. Locking people up for hate speech, and like in Britain, they locked one guy up, gave him 22 months in prison simply because he said he was sick and tired of his taxes going to support migrants that rape our children. 22 months in jail. Oh, that's a hate crime. And now if you said that about Russians, it's okay.
Is the end of central banking needed to truly return the power to the people, and could we see the end of central banking?
No, you do need central banks. People, unfortunately, blame the central banks when they should be blaming the government. The central bank is minimal in as far as the problem is concerned. The vast majority of the money supply is not paper currencies. It is debt. Because today you can buy T-bills and post them as collateral and trade gold. All right? You never could do that in the 60s. All right? It was illegal before to borrow against government debt. That was the theory, that it was less inflationary if we borrowed, because you're taking money out of the system, than if we print it. But then once you can borrow against government debt, now you're just issuing money that's basically pays interest. That's it.
What is the Genius Act, and why should we care?
The Genius Act is a very clever war bond, in all honesty. In 1863, to fund the U.S. Civil War, they came up with this same brilliant idea. They told the banks to buy the bonds, and then to keep the liquidity, they allowed them to issue currency against it. So you can, look online. There were national bank notes that started in 1863. And so this is the same thing. You're going to issue stable coins, but backed by U.S. Treasuries. So it's the same thing. Instead of paper currencies, you can issue them. They have to be backed by U.S. Treasuries. So that's how they funded the Civil War, and they're doing it all over again.
Could stable coins be used to eliminate government debt and end the Federal Reserve?
No, no way. Look, the problem is not the central bank. The problem is the politicians. And people think, we go to eliminate all this and go to a gold standard or whatever. You have to change the political system. All right. I've been there in Vancouver. I forget which politician, what her name was, but one of your lefties up there. She actually had the audacity to say everything you earn belongs to the government, and they decide how much you're allowed to keep. Look, this is, how are you going to eliminate the central bank? That's not going to change anything. You have to change the politics. All right? How are they going to run for election without bribing people? Vote for me, I'll give you a free lollipop and a car. All right? That's how they get in. All right? I can run for Congress. I will say anything you want to hear. I'll save the whales. I'll do this. It won't rain on Sundays. Whatever you want to hear. I get there, and then just look at the votes. They're down party line. All right? I'm told what to vote. I'm not allowed to vote for what I want. Somebody in the back room makes that decision. This is what's coming to an end. All right? So all these people that keep, it's the central banks. Yeah, total bullshit. Eliminate the central bank. What do you think that's going to change anything? It may only make it worse. All right? The same thing happened when Andrew Jackson did that. You have to change the political system. It's this Marxist agenda. They don't know how to run. They don't run for office. Vote for me because I'll manage it better than him. It's vote for me, I'll give you this. And as long as you're going to continue to bribe the people for a vote, so you have power, it can't be a balanced budget. So they're going to have to do whatever the hell they damn well do, and that's always to keep the system going and kicking the can down the road.
By removing the Federal Reserve, could the U.S. print its own money through the Treasury with no interest and no debt accumulation?
Now, like I said, you have to change the political system. Because it's not the Fed. It's basically the bulk of the money supply. Look, we're paying $1 trillion this year in interest. China held almost 10%. They've been selling a lot now, but and then $100 billion of that went to China. It doesn't even stimulate the domestic economy anymore. I mean, it's so screwed up. It's off the charts.
Are there two entities, the United States of America, the corporation, and the United States of America, the country?
Doesn't really much matter. It's basically the politicians there are captured. Rules, you know, like I said, if I ran for Congress, I have to play by the rules to even get on a committee. You can't make a motion on the floor. All right, all motions must come through a committee. This is how they regulate everything. So, you can vote and vote for this guy, and then he's stripped of any ability to do what he claims. This is the system, and that's what's got to be changed.
The director of the Department of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has forwarded recommendations to the Department of Justice for President Obama and his cohorts to be indicted for treason and sedition. Do you think it has legs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, they've been using law for to interfere in elections all the time. Obama was particularly ruthless in a sense. To tell you the true story, I happened to have been in Palm Beach for meetings, and that's where Trump is at, and he has a separate private airport attached to it. Obama flies in on US 1 when he's president and tells them to park in Trump's private airport. All right. Trump then lands, and he's going, what the hell is this? And he starts moving his plane forward. Secret Service comes out, says, you move an inch we're going to open fire. I mean, it was like, what is this? Grade school? This was Obama. He was only there to play personal golf at government expense with a friend. That was it. I mean, it's just... Obama's part of the problem. I mean, that whole agenda is all... It's part of it. I mean, he sent his team up there to help Trudeau get elected. They interfere in everything. What Obama has done it is treason. I mean, this is it. He did the same thing with the IRS. Sent the IRS after any conservatives, audited this, that, the other thing. This is how they operate. Back in 2000, they wanted me to put in $10 billion into this Hermitage Capital. All right, they were going to a regime change for Russia. Who was the owners? Edmund Safra and Bill Browder. Who was Bill Browder? Maxwell's right-hand man. Her father. With Epstein. It's all connected. And, I mean, everything it's just a mess.
Do you think we could be looking at Tulsi Gabbard for president in 2028?
I think she's at least got a fire in her belly. I'm not so sure we're going to make it to 2028 for elections, but I think she's got a fire in her belly that maybe more so than Trump even.
Are the globalists after resources not only in Russia but also Canada?
Globalists are they definitely want to eliminate any possible freedom of anything there in Canada, the same way as they've done in Europe. That's why you've had Carney basically saying he wants to realign with the EU. Really? Take a look at what they've done. Even economically, you can go online and look at GDP growth. Europe is a fraction of that of the United States. And he won by saying, "Oh, Trump wants to annex Canada." Very nice. Okay, he ran against Trump. He didn't run against domestic issues, really. And the whole problem in Canada is that Trudeau was doing what the globalists were telling me to do: shut down Alberta, climate change, all this nonsense. And what, you give up all your jobs? Here, go make some solar panels. This is what they were, they were telling coal miners: shut down your thing and go make solar panels. That's they're off the charts, really. With all their arguments and theories and whatever, and they don't care. They really don't care. They're not that intelligent. They really don't. If they really knew what was going on, I wouldn't be called into every damn crisis that they create. But they blow it every time. And it's always the same stupid stuff.
Is massive unwanted migration likely to lead to the downfall of some countries?
Yeah, I mean, look, the migration in Europe is even worse because it has been mostly, Muslims, and so then they're not assimilating. Okay, so it's more of a conflict culturally. You've had, radical Muslims over there burning churches and stuff like that. In Sweden, the police won't even go into certain areas. They posted signs, Sharia law here. So they haven't assimilated. It's like, we're going there, we're taking over, this is going to be our the way we'd want it. So, I mean, this is all part of the whole problem of civil unrest in Europe, and you're seeing it. This is like by AFD Rose and all these other ones. They're rising because they're against this migration stuff. I mean, over 1,000 girls were raped in Germany a couple of years ago on New Year's Eve, and to hide it, the government came back and said, "Well, take the word rape out and call it assault," to hide it.
Fraudulent elections are happening all over the world. Governments all over the world have been infiltrated by members of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum. Should President Trump designate the World Economic Forum a terrorist organization?
I think he should. It's their agenda, and a lot of them are deranged. I've seen, videos of taken there at meetings when even Bolsonaro was there, and even he said, these people are all a bunch of idiots. But this is what they do. They sit there and they pat each other on the back, and they think that they are more intelligent than everybody else in the world, and they alone know how it should work.
Russia has officially banned Satanism. Vladimir Putin once claimed the West is controlled by satanic pedophiles. Should President Trump ban Satanism?
I don't know if that's more for a PR stunt or whatever, but look, there's definitely, Russia is much more conservative religiously than the United States or even Canada, and or even Mexico is more family oriented than in the United States. I think what people don't appreciate is that when FDR moved to socialism, what he was really doing was the same thing that Stalin was doing, in the sense that Social Security, etc., was replacing the family unit. Before, you would have children, and your children were your retirement. Do children save for their parents today? It's usually the other way around. They're still in their 30s and living at home. So it changed the family structure dramatically. I mean, even you look at marriages, divorce is going up dramatically. Why? Because largely people are getting married closer to the same age. A woman matures faster than a boy. The old adage is that a girl becomes a woman by 23, but a boy doesn't become a man until he's 40. So historically, the guy was typically even up to twice the age. You first had to go get the house, the farm, the chickens, and everything, and then go to the girl's father and say, all right, fine, I want to marry your daughter. And it was, what do you got? Because there was no socialism or government programs or whatever. You had to prove that you could support a family. And the dowry was the father's contribution to her future. It wasn't a bribe, that some people think it was to, to marry my daughter. That wasn't it. It was basically the father's contribution to the future of his daughter and future children. That's what, all that was changed with socialism. So the family structure went out the window. And that's what Stalin really did. I know people that grew up there in East Berlin, and they were told the same thing. Your parents are not really your parents. The state is your parent, and if your parents ever say anything against the state, you should report them.
Where is big money moving to?
Big money continues to come into the United States at this stage in the game. The gold's been leaving London and Switzerland, mainly because they know that war's coming. Once that first bullet is shot, they're clamping down, and they're going to see capital controls. You won't get anything out. World War I, when that happened, they shut down all the stock markets. So that's basically what you're looking at. It's why the stock markets, just look at the Dow, it keeps pushing up to make new highs. Big money tends to go more into the Dow rather than the Nasdaq or something like that. But this is pretty much it. Even the U.S. Treasury market. It's one of the deepest markets in the world. So, when you look at even the real data on who owns U.S. debt, for example, in Japan, people tend to think, they're now the number one holder of U.S. debt. It's not the government. Okay? It's corporations, private, and they have U.S. debt as a hedge against their own government. Same thing that's going on in the UK. It's private buying of U.S. treasuries, not the government.
Where do you think the best places to live will be going forward?
Wherever you really feel most comfortable. I would say not Europe, but some people are basically, looking at South America. I know a lot of people going to Uruguay, things of that nature.
Are bank bail-ins and wealth taxes likely around the corner?
As they get into trouble, they're certainly looking at that in Europe. They're moving more quickly to a CBDC to eliminate cash, and they'll cancel the cash. They're looking to do that soon. That's more or less why, the U.S. dollar is held more than anything else, because about 70% of the paper dollars are outside the United States, because the U.S. has never canceled its currency, but Europe does it routinely. Even Canada canceled its high denomination paper currency. U.S. has just never done that before, so it's people hold dollars where they can't necessarily hold anything else. I mean, I still have some Indian rupees. The last time I was there, I keep enough in my wallet just for, when I land, I got enough for cabs and stuff like that. They're all worthless now. Same thing with Britain. If you got British pound notes from 20 years ago, they're worthless. They canceled the currency. You got to go to the central bank, you say, here it is. They do this because they're Marxists. If you had 100,000 stashed away and they're going to cancel the currency, it forces you to come out. And then they go, oh, did you pay taxes on this? And this is how they do it. So it's pretty routine for Europe. Spain has just canceled, made it that you cannot take more than $3,000 out of your account in cash without government permission.
There are rumors Jeffrey Epstein is in Israel living like a prince. Fascinating that the Democrats are demanding the release of the Epstein files. When the files are released, could they take down the evil that controls the world?
I doubt it. The real question, I know these people think, they're all pedophiles. That's kind of a diversion, really. What Epstein was the biggest blackmail scheme probably in recorded history. And I think that's what they stepped into, and they didn't realize how bad it was. So the question is, this was not... Look, if Epstein was just into young girls and a pedophile nonsense, you do that with your friends, maybe at the local pub. You don't go getting princes of England and heads of state to come in. You do that for bribes. I was warned about that back in the 90s. Be careful, they will use women to try and get into you. I mean, this is standard. I mean, I was warned about it a long time ago. So, I mean, it's... The real question is, you got all these names that visited, very nice. Now, the real question becomes, what did they do for the blackmail? And who paid? Was it CIA, Mossad, some other, intelligence agency? I mean, who knows? That's what I think, is the real problem. And they'd have to admit that the deep state is much deeper and darker than anybody really suspected.
Is the goal of Islam to take over the world, including the West, and how can it be stopped?
Well, nothing lasts forever anyhow. But look, you always have these people on every which side that dream of conquering this or that. It's not plausible. It's not sustainable. And for what purpose?
Bitcoin is making new highs. Make it make sense.
Bitcoin has been more of a lot of people use it for technically money laundering, because you can buy it there in Canada and you can sell it in the United States, so you got your money out. That's how all the volume came from China. And then China figured out what they were doing. They called in everybody from mining Bitcoins there to the bank, to the central bank. They're doing that from Canada. They're doing it from UK, Europe. This is how people are getting their money out, because it's the same item. Yeah, I can buy it here and I sell it over there.
What is Socrates seeing ahead for the stock markets?
It still sees as pushing upward right now. I think that we have to be mindful of basically what we see here on a lot of different aspects. From that, most of the money is kind of really, parking largely because of geopolitical stuff. We do expect to see a lot more volatility coming into play. As far as short term, we do have a panic cycle lining up in October, and I think the initial reaction in like the S&P and NASDAQ would be, if war takes off, initially, you might get a break.
What is Socrates seeing ahead for gold?
Gold is still in a position. It's the main thing about gold is that it's neutral. And this is, what central banks have been buying it, etc. They're not traders. They're not buying it because, we think it's going to go up. They don't care if it goes down. It's just that when war is coming, you don't want to hold the debt of Europe, United States. If you're China, you get rid of it because they're not going to pay anyhow. So that's why China's been dumping U.S. debt and moving to gold. But with as far as gold is concerned, again, we have more of a panic cycle coming up in August, and we see that in October as key periods before we hit 2026.
President Trump wants lower interest rates. Do you think he'll get them?
I hope not. I completely disagree with him on Powell. Trump is a borrower. He's not a lender. So he always wants lower and lower interest rates. But that's, if he gets Powell out, then they can artificially lower interest rates, but you're gonna have, how do you then sell the debt if you go into war? You go into war, interest rates are going to go up. So to me, it's like saying that Trump doesn't really think this is going to go into war, but our computer says it will.
What's the latest on China's economy?
Still in a consolidation period. We're in a global recession, and that's not going to bottom until about 2028.
Is there a monetary crisis now?
Not yet, but there will be, yes. It looks like that is going to be becoming more of an issue in 2026.
What's the latest you're hearing on Alberta and possibly Quebec leaving Canada?
I'd say basically about time. Carney was one of the drafters of the net zero stuff. I mean, is he really going to completely flip around? The big problem with these governments have been that they think that they have the power to dictate to everybody. And when the Federal Reserve was originally created, it had 13 branches, and each one was independent. Because there are regional differences in capital flows. In 1906, you had this San Francisco earthquake, but the insurance companies were in New York. So the banks, the cash went from the east to the west. That created the panic in 1907. Shortages of cash. Banks were failing. It was FDR who usurped the Federal Reserve for his socialistic agenda. And so, kind of like NATO, why do we have 13 branches? He changed it to the point that there's one interest rate for all, and that is decided in Washington. So, what's the purpose of 13 branches anymore? But this was the problem with Canada from east versus west. The Bank of Canada was raising interest rates like crazy back when you had the real estate boom in Toronto, and meanwhile they're putting farmers and miners in the bankruptcy in Alberta. One size does not fit all. And, centralized government does not work. That's the same problem going on in the EU. They're dictating their personal opinions on everybody. And when I do, interviews from Palermo to Netherlands, all I hear now is, when will this end? They've had enough. And I think Canada's at the same position. Last I checked, I think the real polls, were close to 60% of the people wanted to, separate from Canada. And, the policies are, anti-Alberta, basically. So, I mean, this is part of the whole problem. And, it was like when during the election, somebody was in one of Camilla's rallies and was complaining about abortion. And her response was, "You're at the wrong rally." This is what I mean about centralized government. It's going to be my way. I don't care about your religion. I don't care about anything. Take it, stuff it. You will be ordered to do what I say. This is, that's why they stuck Carney in there. And he thinks he's going to do what? So, I mean, Alberta has an absolute right to separate. Personally, I wouldn't join the United States. I would separate, become a separate country, eliminate income tax, and just do the indirect taxes as the original founding fathers of the United States did, and you will see the biggest economic boom ever. You'll have all the companies trying to move and set up there. All the naysayers, real estate will decline if you leave Canada. No, it will go up. This is just the way it is. And eventually U.S. will break up too. I mean, you got 4 different economies here too, 4 different regions, all with different attitudes. You got the Midwest, which is we call the Bible Belt, which is exactly polar opposite of California. I mean, how the two can even be in the same room together is debatable.
Do you think the push for gun confiscation in Canada will get traction?
Look, the main reason is why are they trying to do that? It's because they know that revolution's coming, and they want to disarm the people. That's what it's all about.
Where can our listeners follow you?
Go to Armstrong.Economics.com. You can see, you don't have to put in any emails or anything. We don't send out 50,000 messages, buy this or that. It's an open source, so you can look at it anonymously, and that's basically what we want to keep it as.
Marty, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Take care up there.
My guest has been Martin Armstrong, available online at Armstrong.Economics.com. He was speaking to us from Florida. Coming up, Victor Adair, next on This Week in Money.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com. This Week in Money is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
My guest is Victor Adair, recently retired from nearly 50 years of being in the brokerage business in BC, but still very active in the markets. He's speaking to us from Parksville on Vancouver Island. Welcome back to This Week in Money.
Jim, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for having me on.
Before we discuss individual markets, do you get a sense that the markets are cruising along at half speed because it's summer vacation time?
Absolutely. Or as the Brits might say, abso-bloody-lutely. Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And I'll tell you, I'm in that kind of a mode myself. I've hardly done anything this week in terms of trading. I mean, I still watch the screens every day and all that sort of thing. But, yeah, it seems as though we are in the summer lull. Volumes are certainly lower. The price ranges are tighter. Volatility is almost non-existent, that kind of thing. Yeah, it definitely feels like a summer lull, which, of course, as it happens every year, sort of sets up the market to maybe open with a bang once we get through Labor Day, but we'll see what happens when we get through Labor Day.
The leading stock markets are at or near all-time highs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the S&P and the NASDAQ are at all-time highs here at the end of the week. Toronto and the Dow Jones Industrials are awfully close. And actually, the leading stock market indices throughout Europe and Japan are also at or near all-time highs. Even the emerging markets index is at a 3-year high. So, yeah, it's bullish markets. The S&P is up 33% from the April lows. I mean, how long ago is that? Is that 3 months or something? But they're only up 8% or so for the year. The NASDAQ's up 42% from the April lows. So we've had this real rush up from the April lows. Now we got hammered pretty good. We're down about 20%, I think, in the S&P when we got hit with the Liberation Day. Let's just leave it at that instead of describing it. And I think markets have kind of leveled off. We had sort of one leg up from the lows, and that got us to mid-June, and then we've had another leg up since mid-June. But lately, as I said earlier, the ranges are tight or small, volumes are down, and the market's just kind of drifting higher, it seems. However, everybody is a buyer, and the market's not at all worried, it seems, about the concentration in the handful of big cap tech stocks. The market's not worried about anything. There's certainly high expectations for AI, and nothing seems to be a problem or a worry for the market. And now here's another thing that'll happen as we go into August. August is traditionally historically the most active month of the year for corporate buybacks. And corporate buybacks are by far and away the biggest source of buying in the market. This year we're seeing some of the big brokerage firms in New York are saying they think corporate buying this year will be at an all-time record high. It will be over $1 trillion worth of corporations buying back their own stock. Now, for the last couple of weeks here, the corporations have been, by and large, in a blackout period because they're in quarterly reporting season. They're not allowed to buy their stock when they're leading up to their quarterly reports. But by the time, certainly the first week of August comes here and goes, most of the corporations will be past that blackout period, and they'll be able to roll up the buying machines and start buying again. So, if there are any negatives in the market, and certainly there are some, and some surprises could happen, to some degree they might be neutralized by the amount of buying that will come from corporate buybacks. So, there we go. I think here's one other thought, too, in terms of negatives. We are just a few days away from Trump's August 1st deadline that has been imposed. If you don't make a deal with the United States by then, you will be told what kind of tariffs you will be paying to have the honor of selling into the American markets. Now, there's been a lot of celebration, or some whatever celebration, over all the deals that have been done, which to me mostly look like what I'd call memorandums of understanding, rather than specific in-depth agreements about this and that on trades. But bottom line here, I think the equity markets in particular are underpricing the risk of, call it tariffs or trade wars, and not just the deals or business between the United States and China. I think the stock market in some respects here is just like, it's a what me worry market, so they're not worried about anything. That's my point.
Gold rallied around $500 to nearly $3,500 following Liberation Day, but has since moved broadly sideways within a $200 range. What are the dynamics in the gold market?
Yeah, the $500 rally came after I'm going to call it the gong show that was Liberation Day, when the stock market just really fell out of bed in shock at what Trump was announcing in terms of tariffs. And the U.S. dollar, of course, weakened. Now, historically, a weak U.S. dollar has been good news for gold, but as we've discussed several times on this show over the last couple of years, the relationship between, say, a weak dollar and strong gold isn't what it used to be. But this time around, the gold market really got the bit in its teeth, and away it went. The market had been rallying anyway, and I think we just raced away to the upside. It was kind of one of those periods where you just could not afford to be short gold. Now, exacerbating the rally, and we live here in North America. We kind of think we're the center of the world. In truth, that's changing. What we saw in gold was that the Shanghai market just went bananas, and the volumes of trading, the speculative participation, and in the background, of course, was China, the Bank of China, or various, call it Chinese entities that were affiliated with the government in some way, were huge buyers of gold over the past couple of years. So that was a great backdrop. Chinese speculative buying just was, the cherry on top, and I think that's what drove us in just a few days, really, up hundreds of dollars a day to hit nearly $3,500. I think that's cool. We see volumes down in Shanghai. We see open interest down in Shanghai. The market's kind of been drifting sideways, as it were. The New York market, in my view of things, the New York market is not discovering the price of gold. That's being done in China, is what I'm trying to get around to saying here. So New York is maybe not as significant as it used to be. And maybe you could say in parentheses, and get used to that. The markets are increasingly, or at least what's coming out of China is increasingly important to the markets. So I think that's been very important. The U.S. dollar has been weak this year. That's helped gold. But I think it's kind of a wait-and-see market. And just this week, it was just a very interesting thing. In Tuesday, and make that Monday and Tuesday this week, I guess gold rallied about $100, and then gave all of that back and more. It fell about $125 Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The gold market actually, to me, looks a little tired here. Silver was weak, after nearly hitting $40 this week. Again, it seems to be like that loony summer season when maybe there's not a lot of conviction in markets. But anyway, I'm neutral on a lot of things, and at this point, neutral on gold as well.
The U.S. dollar index fell around 12% in the first half of the year, apparently its worst half in decades. Do you think it'll weaken more in the second half of this year?
Well, I think the consensus is certainly there. Now, you've heard me on this show for, the past 3 or 4 years we've been doing this, and, I've been pretty much U.S. dollar bullish in terms of saying things like, capital comes to America for safety and opportunity and all that sort of thing. It's been one of my expressions for years and years. I see the positioning in the market is U.S. dollar negative. I think one of the drivers of the U.S. dollar weakness in the first half of this year was there was some institutional hedging of U.S. dollar positions. Now, the rest of the world owns more stock in the United States than they ever have before, and with the U.S. dollar going up the past few years and the U.S. stock market going up the past few years, that was just double the fun for foreign investors, particularly things like pension funds. And I know some of the Canadian pension funds have been very, I'm going to say underweight Canada, but, by their reckoning, having 3% of their money if their stock money in Canada was about right, and having most of their money in the United States was about right, well, they got really rewarded for the U.S. dollar and the U.S. stock market both going up at the same time. Now there's been some rethinking of that easy street, and there's been some hedging of the currency risk, and the consensus, I think, expects more of that to come as maybe America's light dims while the rest of the world shines a little brighter. I'm prepared for that consensus to be wrong as we go into the fall. I think the markets are kind of cruising along here thinking there's nothing to worry about, and if there is something to worry about, I think the U.S. dollar will be bid higher.
Copper prices hit all-time highs this month. What do you think about the red metal?
Yeah, the big spike came on, it was July the 8th. Trump just kind of out of nowhere announced that there'd be a 50% import tariff placed on copper, or tariff placed on imports coming into the United States. So that, I remember specifically, the copper market spiked, I don't know, it was like at least 50 cents more than that, in just a minute. And I thought, what the hell happened? What's Trump done now? I went had a quick look at the news feeds, and sure enough, there's this tariff. Now, I think there had been some expectation by the pros in the copper market, and by that I mean the big commodity trading houses. We've seen that they were buying and shipping copper to the United States ahead of that announcement. They may have been just thinking, okay, he put tariffs on aluminum, put tariffs on steel. He's gonna do the same thing with copper. And it's rumored that those trading houses made hundreds of millions of dollars by the big spike high in copper. Let me go back to China. To me, China determines what the price of copper is. And over the past couple of years, a few times, you and I have had a discussion here about, the copper price is kind of a dog compared to the bullish narrative out there about the electrification of everything, and the world needs way more copper than there is copper. So prices ought to be going way higher. Why aren't they? And I've kind of come to the conclusion, and a bit late, I guess, but whatever, that when you look at it, half of the demand for copper in the last few years, anyway, has been China. They demand copper for, they're expanding their economy, and everybody's getting a house and whatnot. And China, from my perspective, is definitely cooling. China, I think, is in a balance sheet recession, and despite the stimulative attempts. The economy is still struggling. Consumers are pulling in their horns. China's trying to make up for it by exporting like crazy, and it's inconvenient that the states are putting tariffs on their stuff, so they're doing this, third-party exporting. And their exports from China are at an all-time high, but consumers seem to be kind of in the dumps. Anyway, that might account for why copper hadn't gone up before. Now we've had this, where do we go from here? Does it reawaken the bullish electrification of everything narrative? So far, it doesn't seem so. Anyway, we've had a spike up nearly to $6 a pound in New York, and I still think it's a China-driven market. I'm not a buyer. I don't. There's a lot of things about copper I just don't know, but I certainly watch it.
Trump appears to be relentlessly pressuring Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, to either sharply lower interest rates or resign his post. What are your thoughts on the president's move?
I think it's wrong, for the president of the United States to be saying some of the things he's been saying about the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I think it's just, at the very least, for crying out loud, is bad manners. But nobody cares about manners anymore. It seems, at least markets don't. It's just blood and glory. Trump, I think, wants to run the economy hot. That's kind of Trump. Just growth solves all kinds of puzzles. If you can build enough real estate and get the prices of stuff up fast enough, you can make a fortune. So he wants to have a stimulative fiscal policy. That's what the big, beautiful bill was all about. I think that's inflationary, and I think if at the same time you have stimulative monetary policy, then you're going to have a double whammy of inflationary pressures. That's my thought. So I don't blame Powell for not lowering rates, but clearly Trump does. I'll tell you what, the forward curve on the short-term interest rates, as we trade in the futures markets here, is expecting about 5 to 6 quarter-point cuts between now and the end of 2026. And a good part of that, let's say there's 2 cuts this year, kind of priced in, but the market's looking at, for sure by the time May rolls around next year and Powell is gone, whoever is heading up the Fed, there creates an environment for lower interest rates. Now, I think there's 12 people on the board that get the vote. The chairman gets 1 vote, so even if somehow they put a guy or gal in there that's ultra dovish and beholden to Trump in some way and will do everything they can to try to get rates down a whole bunch in a hurry, there's 11 other members that may outvote that person, so we'll see. But right now, that's how the market's voting. They're looking for lower short-term interest rates as we go into next year. And I guess while we're on it, I'll say I'm expecting the yield curve to get steeper. In other words, short rates go down, but the long and the yields will rise. I think the market, the consensus, and I kind of agree with the consensus here, is some inevitability of America getting bigger and bigger annual deficits, and the tariffs aren't going to cover that. And the people that are going to buy bonds that aren't otherwise, restrained and have to buy bonds are going to want a bigger yield before they'll put their money into something where they don't get their money back for 10 or 30 years.
Trump's August 1st deadline for tariff agreements is just days away, and it seems many countries have not done a deal with the U.S. Do you think markets care, or are concerns about tariffs and possible trade wars yesterday's news?
Well, I guess I just said that I really don't think they care. I think the market is underpricing the risk of trouble to come from tariffs, to come from people saying, the hell with you, Trump, we're going to do things our way or whatever. I think Trump has been talking about tariffs for 30 years, and that he's sort of, really fixated on that, and he wants to do this. I watched Howard Ludick, or whatever his name is, I think his Commerce or Secretary these days, on Fox News this week, and I saw him talking about his interpretation of what had happened between Japan and the United States in terms of a done deal. And I thought, he's actually lying. But then it's Fox News, and that's what the people want to hear, and they know what they want to hear. I don't think Trump. I don't like Trump as a person. I think he may be one of the greatest presidents the United States has had, but he's not a likable guy. So there can be some confusion there. But I think to get it down short and sweet, I think the market is underpricing that some of the risks that may come before this tariff thing is cut and dried and done. And I think the market is ignoring those risks.
If markets are on a summer holiday, what do you think happens when everybody gets back to work in September?
Over the years, I've seen the markets just like open with a bang after Labor Day, and I really mean that. Like we were going along one way, and all of a sudden, it's slamming into reverse, and we're going the other way. I think I've just seen it happen, and I think there's a chance that could really happen again. I think the market is not prepared, for instance, for a stronger U.S. dollar. The market's not prepared for stock markets to weaken, and the market's really not prepared for interest rates to go up. Not saying those things have to happen, and you could turn it around the other way. I mean, if, for instance, gold rallies and breaks through that $3,500 high, I think the gold market would go higher. If the U.S. dollar was to fall through the lows we made back in July the 1st, and those were the lowest levels we've seen in 3 years or so, I think the U.S. dollar could pick up speed to the downside. But yeah, it feels as though we're kind of drifting along here in the summer doldrums, the dog days of summer, and I would not be surprised, and I would be actually kind of look forward to the markets coming back to life with some vigor once we get past Labor Day.
Victor, you've been writing and posting the trading desk notes on your website for over 8 years. Everybody has free access to everything on your site, including access to all the notes you've written over the years. Why do you do that?
Well, in some respects, it's kind of like habit. I've written about markets for over 40 years. I started being a broker in the mid-1970s, so that's 50 years ago, and I was trading penny mining stocks and that while I was going to university before then. But yeah, I really started to write about markets in the late 70s, and then in the early 80s, I was a currency analyst for the largest commodity brokerage firm in the world, headquartered out in New York, and I would do a morning and afternoon comment and back that up with quick verbal notes on the hotline, and also trade my own account in front of the 600 or so brokers that worked for Conti at that time. So, and I carried on doing that. I liked writing about markets. Now, for me, it's a discipline, I guess. It makes me focus on what do I think, what do I really think, and why do I trade the way I do. I think I'm a better trader because I write about markets, because it makes me think about what I do. Now, I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, some of my friends were joining Substack, and they'd be there for a while, and then they'd go to a paid subscription. The beauty of Substack, one of the beauties of Substack back in those days, was that they did all the back end for you. Like, you didn't have to be processing other people's credit cards or something in some way so you could get paid. Like, they just took care of all that and took a 10% haircut on the income and gave you the rest. So I thought about that, but I never really wanted to go behind a paywall, maybe because I was a broker for the better part of 50 years, and paying clients, as it were, certainly have expectations. And if I'm not charging for what I'm doing, then if I don't feel like writing a note one week, and that happens once in a while, I don't, and nobody's going to bitch and complain about it. Now, I get compliments from people, not a lot, but from time to time somebody will send me a note, and it always really pleases me when I get a note from somebody I know is a veteran, successful trader. And it's usually short and sweet. Hey, really like what you did this week. Thought your idea about such and such was dead on. Thanks for what you do. That kind of thing. So that's for me. For my readers, let me put it to you this way. When I read other people's research or comment or whatever, and I spend, believe me, hours a day doing that. I subscribe to a lot of services. I actually pay for a lot of other services. I'm not looking for those guys or gals to say, buy this, sell that. What I'm looking for is that when I'm reading their stuff, maybe I get an idea that I might not otherwise have had, and that helps me formulate a trading idea, and I put on a trade, and I make some money from that. I kind of hope that what I do does that for my readers, that they're somebody in Timbuktu or whatever, then they're people all over the world that read my weekly trading desk notes. It's because I get to see that with Google Analytics. It shows you, where people are in the world, not specifically, but what country they're coming from and all that. And when I see that, it just kind of I hope anyway that people, when they read my stuff, just get an idea that they can use themselves in their own way to participate in the markets. Maybe they. No, let me just say, short and sweet. There's a little bit of pay it forward here. If you do stuff like that, and some people find it useful, well, that's a good thing. That's like, helping the old folks across the street from you with their stuff around the house. You just do stuff that's good. You don't need to be rewarded for it. And in a way, the the trading gods smile on you. I never wanted my site to be what I would call a buy this, sell that site. And a lot of people maybe want that. A lot of people decide to do that. Again, after having clients for all those years, I think maybe the biggest risk in doing that is, I think the most important thing in trading is managing your risks, not what to buy or when to buy something, and it's usually buy. It's just, what do you do once you got it on? And I've just seen over the years, as I think you've heard me say, I have watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people lose millions and millions and millions of dollars because they don't know what to do when the market doesn't do what they thought it was going to do. And so they stand in there and lose more money than they should. Okay, now to wrap that up to me, I'll tell you something. My number one job is to make money from trading. And if I had to choose between trading and writing the blog, I'm going to choose trading every day of the week. That's what I do. The writing's kind of for fun. It's sort of my side gig, and that's where it is in the ranking. I try to do it good. I work hard at it. I try to be clear. I edit. I use an AI editor so that I don't make any really goofy mistakes. I try to provide something useful, but at the same time, if I had to choose, I would choose trading, not writing.
Victor, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Jim, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to talk with you. Thank you.
My guest has been Victor Adair. His website, Adair.Ca. Coming up, Allan Mark Angell, next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back. My guest is Allan Mark Angell, one of the top realtors in Canada. He has sold more than 4,000 properties. He's located in West Vancouver, BC, Canada, and online at the Angell Group. That's ANGELL Group.com. Allan, welcome back to This Week in Money.
I thank you kindly.
If the spring market is usually the hottest for home sales, could it be downhill from here?
Well, the spring market was awful. It was the worst spring market we ever had. I'll give you an example in my area in West Van. The March and April, both average 73 sales a month, and the best is 129, 142. And we had like 18 in one, and I think we had 24 in the next. So the spring market was just awful. We're having the worst year. All areas are having the worst market in history. West Vancouver has 196 sales as of this morning, and but there's 785 realtors, and they've had 196. The worst year in history is 321 for the total year. So, and it's basically the same in all areas. It's just so bad, and I'm quite convinced that was caused by when August of last year, when I did all my stats for 14 areas, 9 were having the worst year of all time last year. By Christmas time, when Trump got in and Trudeau resigned, the market picked up. We only had three having their worst year of all time. And so that's going to be great. So I started the year off thinking I'm very optimistic. I had an open house on a $5 million apartment at the end of January. I had 16 groups through the first week, 17 in the next week. And then all of a sudden, Trump puts the tariffs in and that, and then the market just has gone dead. Absolutely gone dead. Every area is having the worst, as I said, since June, the worst 6 months in history.
So how were sales for the first half of the year in Greater Vancouver?
Same thing. Every area is the same. I think if I believe, because I think that's 400 and some, and normally I think the worst is 600 and some. So it's just a terrible market. But it's funny thing is I'm optimistic because I think Trump has totally ruined our market, but I didn't like Carney getting in. I thought that the Liberal Party is too far left, and but he got in. So the other guy, the Conservatives, he talked a lot like Trump. That whether you like Trump or not, he's doing a very good job. But it certainly hurt us.
How are the inventory and sales to listings ratios for high-end homes?
Well, there's a huge amount of high-end houses. There's not hardly any sales at all. Hardly any sales in the high end. Like even the high end apartment, it's nothing. There's been 6.3 is the biggest sale, and 4.5 is the second biggest, which is low. I mean, I've sold probably 70 houses that are $8 million and up over the time. But it's our apartments we're talking about. The houses are the same. It's so tough to get a sale right now. It's not that the people don't want to buy. They're sitting back wondering what's going to happen. How is Trump and Carney going to get there? If Trump, and I believe Trump will get most of these things done and the market will probably turn. So I'm still optimistic about that, but I'm not as optimistic about Carney as I am about Trump.
How is the inventory for West Vancouver waterfront properties, and how are they selling?
Well, they're not. I look back when we had 27 sales for oceanfront. Well, you have to realize it's 2018. That was the worst year, and of all since I've been a realtor, and that's a long time. So that's been and 2018 was the worst, and 2019 was the fifth worst, and in the last 3 years have been the third, the second, and the fourth. So in the last 7 years, we've had five worst years we ever had. But the interesting thing about that is that the market hasn't plummeted. I could never explain why it hasn't plummeted, because I can go back. And I remember when I sold a house for $30 million, the guy bought for $17 million 2 years before, and we sold for $30 million. And I knew the market was going to crash. I had a client, an American client, come up here for 2 years, bought a brand new house for 6.2. A year and a half into his 2-year contract, I bought him an offer for $8 million, non-subject deal. He said, "Well, Alan, I got 6 more months to go." And I said, "Listen, take my word for this. The market's about to crash. Nobody spends 20-hour a week analyzing all the sales. No other realtor does that except me. And my stats always show what is going on. He turned it down. So he was there for another 6 months. I put it on the market in January. March, we sold it for 4.6. So 8.9, 7, 8 months earlier. Now he sold it for 4.6. That's what happens. It's done this a couple of times. But now the market we've had the worst market we've ever seen in history, and yet the prices haven't plummeted. And I could never understand why haven't they plummeted. They always have for all the years I've been a realtor. This is exactly, I remember in 1980 I became the top realtor in Canada that year. Then they plummeted the next year. That's what I decided to do all my stats, because I should have known that. But they haven't now, so I couldn't figure out why haven't they? And then money laundering, because I don't pay much attention to them. Never had a deal in money laundering. I found a guy, he wrote a book on money laundering. He's the expert in money laundering in Canada. And I said, I'm going to talk to him if he'll talk to me. And then he knew who I was, so yeah, he wanted to talk to me. So he asked me to, what percentage of houses do you think in the Vancouver Lower Mainland are money laundered? And I didn't have a clue, but I have now. I think I've had one we thought was a money laundering deal. So my guy in the office, he didn't write it up. So I said 1 to 2%. He started to laugh. He says, in the Lower Mainland, you are 30% money laundered. And I was in shock. But then it made sense. But I said, well, that's why the market hasn't crashed, because money laundering guy, like my guy in my office, he had a guy call me. He wanted to buy a $12 million house. He was in Ottawa. And he says, I want to buy this house you got. I'll give them the asking price. No subjects. That's what I'll do. And my guy, he was the manager of my office, and straight as there is, he said, well, you got to come on and see the house. He said, oh, no, I don't need to see it. I've seen the pictures of it and that. I don't need to do that. So my guy wouldn't write the offer up, because he then, I said, listen, I only appraised this at 10 to 10.5, so you're probably paying $1.5 million to $2 million overpriced. Well, I don't care, he said. I just want to buy it. So my guy wouldn't do it. But then it made sense. I said, well, that's why these high-end houses, there's so few sales, but they're all holding the price. If the high-end that does not collapse, the market won't collapse. And that it's always been true, because the high-end can go from 12 million to 8 million, or, like the one I did 8.9, and 9 months later we sold it for 4.6. This didn't happen. But it made sense. That's why it isn't happening, because the money laundering expensive houses. So what that means, so the market is terrible for total sales, but prices haven't dropped as much as they should. But if the money laundering stops, we'll have a huge fall. Now, I don't think the money laundering will stop, because I still can't believe it's 30%. The worst area in Canada is here. So I don't think it will stop. But I do believe in Trump. I know a lot of people don't like Trump, but I don't care what you think. When you look at the Democrats down south, what they've done, to me, the Democrats are the biggest threat to America, not the Chinese. So you know how I feel about things. But that's kept our market up. So I would bet right now, in a few months more, if Carney and Trump can get together, we'll have an okay market. But I just don't know. Is it going to be 2 months, 3 and 6 months? I don't know. I mean, one of our largest real estate companies let go 25% of the 25% of the realtors, because you look at our area, 190 sales, say, for 785 for realtors, and it's already past half the year. The realtors, they're starving. They are absolutely starving. And so the one good thing about our business, the old day, you had to be a realtor and you couldn't do anything else. But now, the last, I forget how many years, but it's been a while, you could work someplace else. You could work someplace else and still be a realtor.
How's the inventory for high-end West Vancouver properties, and how are they selling?
Well, said there's only a few. I mean, I think there's about two high-end houses. But you see, the high-end houses, we used to sell about 20 a year. Now, the last couple of years, we're 6 or 7, 8. That's it. So there's so few, because not that people can't afford them. There could be a war. You don't know what's going on, so they're just afraid to spend the money. So the market just, people want to buy, but they're waiting to see what the hell happens.
How's the condo market doing, especially high-end condos?
Well, the biggest sale this year is 6.5. That's the biggest, or 6.3, and the second biggest is 4.5. So the condo, this is the worst high-end condo market that we have ever seen.
As sales slow, are more and more of the sales pending, subject to the buyers selling their homes?
Well, everybody talks about that now, but the problem is, like I have a few houses they would take as subject to sale. In the old days, they wouldn't. But the fact is, people, what happens when you're doing a subject to sale? If you make an offer on a house subject to sale of yours, you're going to have to pay a lot for it, more than that's probably worth. If you come in with a subject to sale of offer, then people say, well, that probably won't go through, so somebody else will probably be the buyer. So that buyer will offer me less than what the subject to sale of offer is. So if you make a subject to sale of offer, you're going to pay a top price for the house. So a lot of people are reluctant to do that, because they know if they can come in, especially at a market like this, cash a deal, you're going to get the house for a lot less.
Are homes selling above or below the latest BC assessment valuations?
It's interesting. Probably 4 years ago, we sold way below assessment, way below. 82% of them were selling below assessment. And also in the last couple of years, because assessments dropped, they got to be slightly above. Now they're selling at assessment or slightly below.
What's the latest on West Vancouver demographics?
Well, it's interesting, because my office, I've got office all over now. We have 8 different countries in our office, but the demographics in the three we have the Chinese, the Caucasian, and the Persian. 4 years ago, we were a third, and a third, and that's what it was. And then what happened? The government stopped foreign buyers, so now we can't have a foreign buyer. So now, last year, Caucasians were 52%. It moved up. I think that's all because of the foreign buyers. We don't have the Chinese buying. I used to sell probably 15-60% of houses to people from the States. Now you're not allowed to. That's also one of the reasons that the houses were selling every year. When I look back at like in West Van, the lowest was 218 and 321. But the best year was 1989 at 1,201. So you look back at 1986, we had the fair there, the expo. Everybody came in 86, and they all moved here in 1989. So it changed completely. So the market has got less and less and less. As I said, in the last 7 years, we've got the 5 lowest of all time. Slightly higher than the last, we've been when we had the 2% in that. 1.5%. It was great, but then they went up. They went up so high, so it slowed the market down for sure. But I remember when they were in 1981, they were 19-20%. I didn't think we'd see 10% again.
Where do people selling their homes in West Vancouver tend to move to?
They're moving into an apartment, because the house is so much work. You have to pay for the gardeners, the pool, whatever else you have. It's so expensive, and so they move into an apartment. Last year we had 400 houses sold, and 247 apartments sold. So, You think when people sell a house, they're probably buying a house to start with. That's what they're doing. But as you get older, the other reason about the high end, 12 of my friends have sold them places on the ocean. So when I sold these places years ago, I said, God, when I get to be older, I'm going to make a lot of dough. All these guys are going to have to move to a high-end apartment. But all of them put an elevator in the home. So they're not going to move at all. They're going to spend the rest of their life in their home. So that's a change I didn't see coming, and it came.
In West Vancouver, there are high-end homes recently listed for double or more than the latest property tax assessment. Why would sellers want to list that high, and why would realtors take on those clients, especially in this market?
Well, let's see how I can get an example of that. There was a house that I thought was worth probably $40 million tops. Okay, and I didn't get the house. And I know I'm right about the price, but somebody else took it at 58. And I said, well, why would you take it that price? There's no chance to sell. And he says, yeah, but look how good it looks on my page, because if you have one in that price range, then everybody else who has a more expensive, they'll probably use him. So that's why you take it, because you don't think, or also there's also a chance he could drop the price, or maybe he's borrowing the money from the bank and say, look, the price it's on for.
We're hearing money laundering is everywhere in BC, including real estate. If for some reason money laundering is no longer buying real estate, could home prices be affected?
Prices will absolutely collapse, because I said they haven't collapsed yet. They're surely after they're selling for less. But if money laundering stops, I think we'll have a massive crash.
Do buyers sometimes offer over asking when there are actually no other buyers or offers for that property?
Well, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen, but. Well, why would you if you're asking 6.9 and nobody else is buying it? Why would you offer more? There's no reason to. The only reason for that is that the realtor who has the house for sale is saying, well, there's 2 or 3 people that may have offers. So the people don't know whether the offers are coming in or not. So they offer a little more, so they'll get the house for sure. But that's the only reason you would offer more, because every time you do a deal, the realtor says, "Oh, that I've got 2 or 3 that come back, 2 times or something." So they could be making an offer. So once I make an offer, he's going to call the other guys.
Is there a window of time where the buyer can back out of the deal?
Yeah, most times it's subject for 10 days or something. So you could back out anytime you want in that 10 days. But there is this new thing. If you make a non-subject deal, you get 3 business days to back out. And if you do, you have to pay 0.25% as a penalty on the price. So most people, you hardly ever see a non-subject deal. I just had one, but price was so good that people just said, "Well, I'm going to make it non-subject. I want the place if I can buy it for that price." So yes, you have the 3 days to back out, and then you pay 0.25% of the price of the home.
Do you think artificial intelligence will change how real estate is sold?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't have a clue. I can't imagine. Because our business is, we need to know, like I always tell people that, there's so many changes in my business that I don't like. I told all my employees for years, get to know every realtor in the area. Every realtor in the area, because all of a sudden, if you know them all and you get an offer on the house, if they know you, it's going to be easier for you to close the deal. Because if there's multiple offers and he doesn't know the other 2 agents at all, he knows you, he'll probably help push the deal towards you. So I don't know But now they text all the time. I hate the texting. It drives me crazy. Like, I remember the first time I used it, I was showing, I called to show these apartments in town. And they said, "Oh, you have to do a text." So I sent them a text. All six confirmed the time I wanted. And then, so I went over to show them. 3 of the agents didn't show up. I said, "Well, how come you didn't show up?" "Well, you never text me back that you need to text. He texts you, then you text him back and say, I've got it." So you have to make 3 texts for one bloody appointment. And you don't talk to the realtor. I need to know what the realtor's like, what he or she is like. I need to know some information. Have you had any offers on the place? I need all the information. If I know the realtor, then it's easier for me to write up an offer. I've competed in offers probably 60 sometimes and lost twice because I gather the information about the realtor. I know which ones I know are going to tell me the truth, which ones I'm not 100% sure will. So I have to, that's what you have to do. This is a people business. So is it AI? It isn't a real people business. So yes, you could do that, but the business has changed so much. Personalities, you get to know the people. It was fun. We used to have baseball leagues. We had running leagues. We had all these sorts of leagues we did. It was fun. You don't have them now. None of it. You don't meet half the realtors because it's all text. It's just like so many businesses have gone the wrong way. Ours is the same.
The Bank of Canada's next meeting is July 30th. Are banks making it tougher to get mortgages, forcing some people to sell?
Well, yes, they are, but also tougher to buy. I've got a $5 million apartment, which is one of the top 3 for sale. Then I've got the lowest 2-bedroom apartment in West Van for sale. 2 beds for $729,000. That's the lowest price 2-bedroom in West Vancouver. So I've had the whole year. I've sold it twice. Both of them didn't get the funds. This is a $729,000. I mean, so it's financing is always our concern now. Always our concern, whether you want the funds or are you trying to get a mortgage, you're trying to qualify. It hasn't helped. The banks and the government always destroy our market. It's not just the government; it's the banks too.
When sellers want their price but the buyers won't pay that price, who is likely to win this game of real estate tug-of-war?
Well, it depends. If there's some people, like I just sold an apartment. The woman had lots of money. She didn't care. She took a lower price. She just wanted to get it off the chart there. So it depends the circumstances of the couples. Do you want to sell? Do you have to sell? Or most people put the house on the market and they don't have to sell. If I get the biggest line, if I get my price, I'll sell. I hear that probably 3 out of 5 times. If I get my price, I'll sell. If not, I won't. And so normally the buyer will win once in a while, but not most times the other way around. Because the wife loves the house. She says, "Dear, you have to buy this for me," and that's it. And so that's, it's just how it is.
Mark, where can people follow you and contact you?
Angell Hasman, Malcolm Hasman is my partner at Angell Hasman, or the Angell.Hasman.ca, or my cell phone is the best, 778-888-7474.
Allan, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jim. Okay, bye-bye.
My guest has been Allan Mark Angell, one of Canada's most successful real estate agents ever. And that wraps up our show this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Martin Armstrong, Victor Adair, and Allan Mark Angell. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions for the show or for our guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. We'll be back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allan.